the compartment she booked under my name. I don't ride trains to think. I ride trains to stop choosing. You sit, the world moves, and for once it isn't your fault what passes the window. That's how it was supposed to work the night she slid my ticket back across the bar like a dare and said, "You'll need this when the conductor asks why you're in my bed." My name is Aaron, and on good days I'm a contracts lawyer who can make a promise behave. On bad days, I make other people look surprised by the consequences they rehearsed. I'd taken the overnight from Vienna to Zurich because flying felt like submitting, and because my client in Basel thought signatures travel better by rail. The bar car smelled like polished brass and the category of whiskey that forgives. She sat one stool over, a knife of a woman in a charcoal dress that knew the value of polite shadows. She had the kind of posture that makes bartenders tidy themselves. I noticed the ring first, then the lack of wear on the skin beneath it, which is a tell I should never admit to collecting. I ordered a drink I didn't deserve and opened my laptop like a shield. "Your name," she said, not as a question, as if picking up a conversation we'd been having in a different life. "Aaron," I said, and found myself spelling it as if it mattered what vowels she imagined. She pushed a paper triangle toward me, my ticket, folded once, the print scuffed by two different hands. "Your seat is occupied," she said, "by a man with my face." I looked, she wasn't wrong. The masked profile in my assigned couchette belonged to a stranger who wasn't there yet. The name on the manifest matched my passport. The compartment number matched the brass oval on the corridor door. The date didn't. The date was yesterday. "You rebooked me," I said. "I rescued you," she said. "The man who actually holds that seat will be pleased with his upgrade. You will be pleased with mine. Please don't make me explain this in front of the barman. He collects stories." "You're married," I said, because the ring had eyes. "Everyone on this train is married," she said. "Most of them to their plans." She paid for my whiskey and left the ticket where she dropped it. I should have asked for a conductor. I should have found the man with my name. Instead, I followed her through the swaying corridor to a carriage with more velvet than a respectable budget approves. She led me past doors that pretended not to be listening, to a compartment whose number I would remember for longer than I planned to be proud of. The compartment was a small theater. 2 bunks, one folded. Mirrors that let you see your decisions from 3 angles before you make them. A silver carafe, 2 glasses, a patience of lamplight. She placed her handbag on the seat, slipped the chain from her shoulder like it was a snake she loved, and turned toward me with a problem in her smile. "My name is Myra," she said. "The ticket is in your name because my husband's staff booked it that way, and my husband's staff booked it that way because they like to be clever. They think they've trapped me. I intend to make them bored." "Your husband," I said, because it's a word you test like water. "Minister," she said, with the kind of neutrality that only grows in rooms with expensive carpet. "He's very good at pretending to be the country's conscience. He's less good at pretending his phone isn't a camera." "You booked this compartment under my name." "I booked this compartment under the name his staff thought they could use to prove I was somewhere I wasn't," she said. "And then I invited you to be where they think I was anyway. It's as close as I get to a moral." It should have been nonsense. It was. The train loosened itself from the platform and became a plan. We swayed into the tunnel where stations forget to be cities. She poured water like a ritual. "The conductor will knock once after the first boarder and twice after the second," she said. "If he asks whose compartment this is, you will tell him exactly what the ticket says. If anyone else asks, you'll ask them to rebook their curiosity in the morning." "And us?" I asked. She stepped closer. Not a seduction, an opt-in. Her hand lifted, paused, landed on the placket of my shirt as if testing whether buttons can be convinced. "We practice not lying to ourselves," she said. "We see how far honesty travels before it needs translation." We kissed. It wasn't urgent. It was precise. The kind that makes a carriage seem designed for the purpose and the purpose seem designed for mercy. Her mouth tasted like the lime the bartender had tried to hide under politeness. My hands found her waist and learned it the way musicians learn a new song, measure by measure, nothing beyond tempo. When we separated, her breath wrote an apology against my throat that did not need to be forgiven. "I should ask why," I said. "Ask later," she said. "There's something I need to show you that isn't me." She retrieved a flat package from her bag, unwrapped it, and revealed a postcard that wasn't a postcard. The paper was heavier. The photograph on it showed a man leaving a door that had never learned discretion. The man was a minister who had practiced sincerity on television since the nation was young. The timestamp was tomorrow afternoon. The building behind him belonged to a man who leases favors. The angle could only be from a camera I repaired last year at a hotel that pays me in steak. "Someone is going to drop this into the stream at noon," Myra said. "They'll say it proves everything the boring people always suspected. They'll ask me to comment, which is a neat trick because the timestamp says I will have already done so." "Your husband leaked his own scandal," I said, "because the world is a snake that eats its tail and calls it narrative." "His staff did," she said. "They think if they schedule his humiliation, they can schedule my response. It gives them a better headline. It also lets them point at this ticket and say I was elsewhere being tragic." "Where does the train fit?" I asked. "It gives me a corridor where their phones can't multiply," she said. "It gives me a witness who isn't theirs. It gives me a room to do the one thing we never allow women to do publicly." "What's that?" I asked. "Refuse to perform surprise," she said. The train breathed through the first border like it had applied for permission 2 years ago. The conductor knocked once, opened his book, studied my ticket, studied me. Myra's face learned a new expression, the soft arrogance of the truly tired. I said my name. He said it back like grammar. He stamped something that wanted stamping and left us with a faint scent of rain. "Who booked this compartment?" I asked, after we relearned how to be still. "His chief of staff," she said, "who calls himself family in holiday photos and friend in indictments. He works very hard at being useful." "And you invited me because—" "Because you were already in the manifest," she said. "Because you looked like a man who knows when to leave a room even when the room is polite. Because your ticket says you will spend this night telling the truth to a stranger, and I wanted to cash in on someone else's fiction." "You could have chosen anyone," I said. "I needed someone who writes signatures that don't embarrass themselves later," she said, "and someone who can be soft when the train asks." "The train is asking," I said. Her mouth flickered into the kind of smile that doesn't get traded. She slid the postcard back into its paper, tucked it away, and sat beside me with a patience that felt like heat waiting for consent. "Tell me what you fear," she said. "Paper that forgets which side it's on," I said. "People who remember only the part where they win," she said. We spoke in that hush that holds between strangers who decided not to be. We traded child-sized truths and adult-sized facts until the lamp learned our faces. She told me she'd met her husband when they both thought rules were boats, and they were good at swimming. He told her he liked how she looked at problems as if they owed her an explanation. She told me the first time he lied in public it was to protect a person, and the last time he lied it was to protect the story. Somewhere in there a child had been wanted and not arrived, and a house had learned to be a museum. The second boarder came on a curve that made gravity reconsider its ethics. The conductor knocked twice. He asked for nothing, stamped nothing, made a mark in a book that must survive longer than its owners. When he left, the compartment felt like it had been forgiven for something. "You could stay," she said, not as a dare. "Or you could go back to your assigned bed and pretend none of this is yours." "I should go," I said, "which is why I'm staying." She nodded like a person who understood the price of both. We slept in a choreography that didn't pretend to be innocence. We were careful to be adult and reckless to be alive. I took the lower bunk because she told me to, and because obedience is sometimes a gift. She took the upper and watched my face for a moment too long before the curtain denied both of us a prolonged mistake. The night hummed. Somewhere, a customs officer made a joke about jurisdiction. I woke to the smell of coffee that thinks it is a substitute for apology. Myra was already dressed, a simple sweater over whatever armor women use when they plan to step into a day that thinks it owns them. She held the postcard in one hand and my ticket in the other, as if weighing the relative debts they represented. "Will you walk with me to the door?" she asked. We moved down the corridor like a story pretending not to be one. At the end of the car, just before the vestibule, she stopped and turned, close enough that I could see the faint constellation of freckles the makeup on television erases. She pressed the postcard into my palm. "If I hand this to a reporter, it will be about him," she said. "If I post it myself, it will be about me. If I give it to you, it can be about proof." "I am nobody," I said. "Exactly," she said. "Nobody is who I want. We live in a world where every somebody is already sold." "I'll hold it," I said. "I'll decide later." "You already decided," she said. We stood like that with the train shaking our ankles, the world outside practicing its neutrality. I didn't kiss her then. We'd earned the restraint and didn't cheapen it. She reached up and touched my jaw with the back of her fingers, an intimacy that belongs to people who have known other versions of each other in other lives. "You'll see me at noon," she said. "On a platform?" I asked. "In the comments," she said, and smiled like she'd left a trap in a word she'd spelled herself. The Zurich platform wore mourning like it rents it out. The minister's staff was there, polite and predatory, with coats that tell you what a salary can buy when ethics is a hobby. They watched her descend and arranged their faces the way PR teaches. I stood 3 carriages down and watched no one watch me. I had a postcard in my inside pocket and a name I couldn't afford to tell a story. At 10, I delivered the ticket to the conductor with my real compartment and an apology that felt like a habit. At 11, I sat in a cafe where the waiters have learned to refill cups like therapy. At noon, the clip dropped. The man leaving the indiscreet door at tomorrow's timestamp was her husband, and the post was hers. She wrote 3 sentences. "The truth doesn't need choreography. The timestamp is the tell. I won't be surprised on schedule." The comments tried to make her a saint or a witch. She refused both. She posted once more, "You can have my silence or my honesty, not both." The nation inhaled. The staff that had planned to escort her through a good wife routine made themselves into hats and disappeared. I mailed the postcard to a reporter who cared about source protection more than clicks, with a note. This was meant to be ammunition, not proof. Use it to teach people how to read time. She wrote back with a sunflower and a promise to make the headline boring and the analysis sharp. I believed her because she had once killed a story that tasted like blood. By evening, the minister gave a press conference in which he performed gravity and said phrases that belong in museums. He apologized to his family without nomming his behavior. He said he wouldn't resign because the country needed him to learn in public. The opposition shrugged and said they prefer their scandals staggered. The river moved on. I didn't see Myra again that day. I saw her a week later in Basel, where I was supposed to be dressed for dinner, and instead found myself walking along a river that speaks French to German architecture. She stepped out from a shadow that belonged to a bridge and touched my elbow like a halo you could wear without blasphemy. "How did we do?" she asked. "We told the truth without confessing to a crime," I said. "Which is a crime in some rooms," she said, and smiled the tired, warm smile of a woman who had slept alone on purpose. "Thank you for not trying to save me." "I wanted to," I said. "I know," she said. "That's why you didn't." We stood by the railing and let a barge pretend it was a metaphor. She leaned into me with the caution you give beings that might spook. I put my hand at her back where permission had already been granted by weather. We kissed like grown-ups who knew how to stop, and we stopped, and it was both a kindness and a vow to a future that may or may not show up. She left with 2 fingers against my wrist, a pulse check and a goodbye. I watched her go and didn't follow. The postcard was already a headline. The train had already delivered us to choices. I still don't ride trains to think. I ride them to practice not choosing until my stop arrives and I have to. On this one, I chose a door with a number I didn't forget. I chose a woman who declined to perform surprise. I chose to hold paper that wanted to lie and serve it a different verb. I chose a kiss that didn't pretend to be a plan. When the conductor asks now, in other compartments on other nights, why I sit where I don't belong, I show him my ticket and answer like grammar. My name is Aaron, and this is mine for as long as the journey allows. The rest can wait until platforms and daylight.